you. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ray.
Welcome. Guess we got the piano on here just in time. Give a little bit of background to the new people to this Monday night work. Last spring, enough time.
Really, can you get close to the mic?
Huh?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
God,
Okay.
same thing.
We'll try. Maybe a little bit further.
Here are the mics just for this part.
I wasn't using it.
All right, that's as close as you can get it.
Okay.
You can also just tell me to speak up.
Okay.
Because there are people a lot further away than you, figuratively. Any event, it really became clear to me last spring that we needed to have some way that we could learn the letter of truth in a language that was consistent with us. This book, Pointing at the Moon, is titled An Introduction to Spiritual Consciousness, and if you want to develop your spiritual consciousness, you're going to need to meditate, and you're going to need to know the letter of truth. You're going to need to know the spiritual truth, what spiritual truth is. These two things are essential to the development of a transcendental consciousness, which is what we mean by spiritual consciousness. Spiritual and transcendental are the same thing. So, a lot of people were having trouble with Joel Goldsmith, who's the best teacher of spiritual truth, the letter of truth that I know, because his vocabulary is the vocabulary that was fine for Christian Science students in 1950. But it's not really appropriate for AA students in 2005. And there was a bunch of other information that I had over the years, so I put together some drafts of some information and about truth, and we had a group last summer called Pointing at the Moon, and we read through those chapters. There were 8 chapters, and we read through 7 of them in 10 or 11 weeks, and while we did that, I took notes and heard what was not understood and what wasn't clear and what needed expanding on and what was bullshit, and as we went week by week, I upgraded the book, and that resulted in this book. And when we finished getting through that, then we spent the fall, 3.5 months anyway, just talking about the material that we covered in the first, in the reading of the book, of the first draft, and we talked about that and explored whatever spiritual truths and had some practices and some exercises and such like. And the group started to expand, and more people came in, and it seemed like it would be appropriate at this time to go back and read the new version of the book, and that way the new people could come in and get started at the first once again at the beginning, and catch up, and the old people, the people who had been here for half a year or so, would hear the same material from an entirely different consciousness, hopefully. Hopefully there's been some gains in spiritual consciousness during the work we've done in the last 6 to 9 months. So that's really what prompted reading it again. It's time that we go through it and see where we're at and bring the new people up to speed. We're going to do it a little differently this time, in that last time I wanted to get through it so that we could get on to other stuff, so I was hoping we could read a chapter a week, and we didn't quite do that, but we read it 2/3 of a chapter every week. This time we're going to just take however long it takes to get through it. Questions, after every paragraph, questions are fine. We can hit topics that are related. We can go into them in any depth. We can bring in new material if it's given to me to bring it in. We'll just see what goes on, and maybe by the time we're done, the book will be doubled in size. I don't know. I don't have any plans for this class. It might take 2 weeks if nobody asks any questions. It's all speed read, but it might take 4 months or 5 months or however long it takes. So there's no rush, and feel free to ask questions and discuss, and we'll go into it in whatever depth people want to go. We'll just keep exploring and exploring until we're done with the topic. And there's a lot of areas back in the practical mysticisms where we really just gloss over and hit high points, and I think at that point we may do specific classes on specific topics and go deeper and deeper into those. So we'll see what happens. I don't have a plan. We'll just see what happens and where we want to go. It would pay you to come every week because it is a consecutive class and it is growing, and the information every week depends on what was read the preceding week. It is being recorded, as you can see, and so be aware of that. What I'm going to do with that recording is I'm going to put it on the website, and it's going to be up there as audio files so that if you have to miss a class, you can listen to it. And, of course, so can anybody else. Now, it's somewhat controlled, but the audio pages require a subscription to listen to them, so they cost $20 a month to listen to the audio pages on the website. But you can listen to all of them. You can listen to the same 20. You can listen to all the previous classes. You can listen to the Pointing to the Moon class. You can listen to the Reaching for the Moon last fall. You can listen to the TNT stuff. So all of it's available. The real reason for the fee on the website and for the tuition here is A, that people don't value things they don't pay for, and B, keep the tire kickers out. The semi-casual curious will not be able to go to the website and just listen. They have to have intention to find out what's there and listen. So it just keeps it a little more private and a little more sacred and a little close. So that's the reason that we have both a fee here and a fee for listening on the website. Let's see what else. The format of this is we're always going to have a 15-minute meditation, and then we'll read the book for an hour, and we'll read from 7:30 to 8:30, and as soon after 8:30, as we get to a breaking point, we'll stop. I don't intend to run over much. We'll have a flashcard each week. And I'll tell you what the flashcard is when we finish reading and what they are. We'll have a flashcard each week so we all have something to work on together to keep our consciousness being stimulated during the week. Dulcie's on the conference call phone, and if there's people who want to call in because they're going to be out of town and they let me know, I can arrange to really set up a conference call and give you a number you can call into, and everybody calls into that number, and I call into that number, so we can do a conference call if you want to. If I don't know any better, why I will just invite Dulcie to call here directly, because it saves the nickel. But we may, if there's interest in doing conference calls, if you'd rather do the conference call, in other words, on Monday night rather than listening to the audio of the class on Tuesday or Wednesday, drop me an email and let me know, and we'll figure out how to do that. So, any questions about that? Oh, about sharing. I'm really interested in questions and probing questions deeper, but this is not a forum for sharing your script work or your kid work. Those are separate workshops, and we really don't want to spend time listening to people sharing about it stuff. If we're pursuing a question and you have a specific piece of experience on this question that will bring some light to it, that's of course very welcome. But I don't want to wander off into just generalized sharing about what's going on in my life or something like that. There's kid work and there's script work and there are other forums for that, and this isn't that forum. This is a forum for exploring the meaning of spiritual truth, as impossible as that is. And you don't need to have a book to do this. I have, because the light isn't all that bright in here, I have large print versions, and we'll pass the large print version around for people to read. So you don't need a book. And I guess if there's no questions, I guess we'll just get started. Let's jump in. any point, raise your hand to ask a question. Dulcie, hit one of your number keys and we'll hear if you want to say something. In case we can't hear you over the other people here or something. And let's start right at the front page. And your glasses? Okay. Let's start right on page 3 and read those 2 quotes, please, Joe.
We are not human beings trying to have spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having human experiences.
That's the basic fundamental structure under all the workshops we do here. That's always the truth, and what we're doing is discovering that. So that's sort of our fundamental hope here.
Our work is to make our transition from human being acted upon forces, powers, and influences beyond ourselves to spiritual beings, where the infinite, invisible, within, without, and all about us is the only power, influence, or force acting upon our experience. This transition must be consciously made by consciously declaring and realizing that we are no longer under the material or mental law, but live by grace, that we no longer love, fear, or hate the visible universe, but yield ourselves to the infinite, invisible, which formed us and gave us dominion by grace. Joel S. Goldsmith.
That's the quote which I hope will become clearer and clearer as we go through this book. I just heard that statement by Joel, and I thought it was just really a great statement of what's going on here. And I have a paraphrase of another quote of Joel that I think I'm going to put in there next time around. In one of his tapes, Joe's talking to his class, and he says, people want peace, but they don't want what produces peace. People want to be healthy, but they don't want what produces health. People want abundance, but they don't want what produces abundance. People want companionship, but they don't want what produces companionship. People want to be loved, but they don't want what produces love. And obviously he could have gone on forever, but this is the dichotomy between material consciousness, between human consciousness and spiritual consciousness. People are in human consciousness and they're out there trying to get all these things, and there's nothing out there that produces any of these things. That's one of the things we'll learn in this class, hopefully. That what produces these things is conscious contact with God. Okay? And people out there that want peace don't want conscious contact with God, they want peace. That's the basic problem. Okay? All right. Page 7 starts the introduction, and read loudly enough for Dulcie to hear it, and read carefully.
How much do you want to do?
Read the Zen story, 4 paragraphs.
Introduction. I love the story about a Zen master who had taken a vow of silence. He was trying to indicate the moon to his disciples. When the students saw gesturing, not pointing, they saw the hand, not the moon. They came as close as they could to the master's hand and arm in hopes of discovering their secret. One noticed that one finger was extended forward and 3 backward, and assumed that was significant. Another focused on the thumb extending upward and no finger downward, and based his theories on that. A third studied the relationship of the fingers to the hand to the arm, and the angle of the arm to the body, which of course changed as the moon moved across the evening sky. One monk glanced up, saw the moon, and immediately understood what the silent master was doing, that the gesturing was pointing. He understood perfectly and completely. He pointed at the moon himself and left him disgust when other monks began examining his hand. The difficulty is that truth is ineffable. There is no way to talk about truth. All we can do is point to it. And the way we point is with words. Unfortunately, there are no right words to use, so we have to use those we think will best serve as pointers. But the same word has a different meaning for each person who hears it, based on his or her particular background, ethnicity, age, sex, religion, etc.
My most important teachers have been Joel S. Goldsmith, Joel, Bhagwan Rashneesh, Osho, and Robert Adams, Robert, and Lee Scantlin. I also have learned much from several of Joel's students, especially including Herb Fitch, Barbara Mull, Barbara, Meg Johnson, and Joel Scott. Joel had his first experience with truth in 1929 and continued to have revelations until his passing in 1964. Joel found himself to be a healer as a result of his first experience. He didn't know initially what the healing principle was, but he knew he needed to learn it and understand it in order to keep it. In 1945, he wrote The Infinite Way, revealing the principles of over 16 years of healing meditation.
You all became a clear picture of what you call the letter of the truth. Statements of actually clear facts, the metaphysical and mystical principles which underline the creative act. The students were primarily metaphysicians from the Christian Science community and new thought movement. They used expressions, terms, and quotations from Mary Baker Eddy's writings and the New Testament to best communicate with them. But for many of us today, that very Christian touch of words didn't work. You may not consider the New Testament to be an authority. You may not accept Jesus as a master. Joel's teaching is in a mid-20th century metaphysical Christian vocabulary, which doesn't speak to many of the students in our 21st century community themselves.
Osho is the most amazing master of every path I have ever encountered. His explanations of Zen, Sufism, Tantra, Buddhism, Tao, Jesus' teachings, and every other significant spiritual path opened horizons for me in every direction. Treating with him comes as close to directly touching rather than pointing as is possible. Being with him enabled me to understand Joel at a whole new level. Robert is a sage who was spontaneously enlightened. He learned ways to express his experience in India from Ramana Maharshi and the other enlightened masters he spent time with there. His words are those of the Advaita Vedanta, non-dualistic tradition. Robert, however, did not claim to have a teacher. He was the teacher. Sitting in the consciousness with Robert was the sweetest and most powerful experience ever.
You don't have to keep reading. You can jump in and ask questions about Joel, or ask questions about Robert, or ask questions about Osho, or do anything like that you want. If you want more information, ask for it. Yeah.
I don't understand what you mean when he said he was the teaching and he didn't teach. What does that mean?
The teaching, you'll understand better as we get further through the book, but the fact is that the teaching is an experience in consciousness. It's not sentences that are strung together. It's not the words that are strung together. The words that different teachings, as they're called, have different sets of words, but all these words, the purpose is to lift the student's consciousness to the level where he can have the experience of truth. Okay? Truth is never a sentence. There is no true sentence. Truth is never intellectual understanding. Truth can't be grasped or explained, but we can lead people closer and closer to it by studying the letter of truth. But truth itself is an experience. And Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And that's what he meant. I am the truth. Not I teach the truth, or I'm a truth teacher, or anything like that. And Robert was always in the consciousness. Robert was never not in the consciousness. It's incredible, for those of us who are trying to be in the consciousness for a minute every now and then. Robert was always in the consciousness. So being in his presence was You got lifted by being around him to the point that you had the experience. And experience was the experience of what it is. Okay?
I was always curious about Joel, why he got into like the healing. Was he trying to teach truth through healing, or?
He didn't intentionally get into healing. Joel had some experience with the Christian Science healers and went through a Christian and had been studying truth himself for 15 years probably, and he had a physical problem, a cold or something, and was really quite sick, and went to a Christian Science practitioner's office to get a healing. And the details of the story don't matter much, but he sat down with this Christian Science practitioner, who apparently was a very high practitioner, and in that guy's consciousness, he experienced truth. I mean, he had a full-blown, full-on mystical experience and experienced the truth itself. And lots of things changed. I mean, his whole lifestyle changed. All his interests changed. It's sort of interesting what he said. He said, that his desire to drink and smoke dropped away, and his desire to play cards and bridge like that and stuff like that he was doing that slipped away. His cold or whatever his physical problem was healed. He said he also used to have corns on his feet, and his corns disappeared, and nobody was interested in those. But just all these physical changes were just the result of his being lifted in consciousness to a place where they didn't exist. And like the next day, some woman came up to him on the street and said, "I know if you'll pray for me, I'll be well." And Joel said, "What?" And she says, "Pray for me so that I can be well." And Joel closed his eyes and he said, "Father, I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do here." And to himself silently, he said, "I don't know how to pray. All I know is," he says this how to pray. He said, "All I know is now I live and he starts, and she taps him on the shoulder and she says, "Thank you." And she's healed. Okay? So he got the healing consciousness, and it's not, now you know that there's no words for truth. He has the healing consciousness. It was just given to him. And he also knew that along with that came the knowledge that he would have to know how he did that and what came about that. That was back in 1929, see. The Infinite Way was written in 1945, which was 16 years later, after a 16-year practice, most of which was as a Christian Science practitioner, and so they wrote the Infinite Way, and his principles were so high that they threw him out. Because they weren't interested in his level of truth. It was purely mystical rather than mental. So that's what happened there. He was just stuck with, he was a healer all of a sudden. There are many people who have been healers who didn't know how, and often they lose it. Often they heal for a few years, and Bill chuckles about some healer or some very famous healer there, and he said, well, and he doesn't mention the guy's name, but he said, well, there's a very famous healer who recently announced that he was going to give up healing and start saving souls. And he says, I don't know what that means, he says, but it never would occur to me to give up healing. So, in this context, he was highly suspicious that guy lost it probably because he began thinking he was doing it. Probably the ego came in or something. Okay. So thank you for your questions. Okay, next paragraph.
Robert Osho and Joel all had experiences spontaneously, although Joel had many more experiences subsequently. Their teachings appear to be quite different, yet my inner being knew they pointed to the same truth, even though at first I couldn't see how the teachings corresponded. Now I know that the level and background of their students differs significantly, and that students determine the vocabulary and level of the class.
This book is an attempt to point at the one truth that Robert, Osho, and Joel experienced, using words that have as little conditioned emotional meaning associated with them as possible, and with no claims as to the authority of any teacher or teaching.
There is a great deal of pointing in this book. or an introduction. A good way to read it might be to read through one chapter at a time, then go back and read each paragraph one by one, sentence by sentence, making sure that you understand what each sentence is saying. It's not important to accept or agree with anything. What's important is to hear it. Let it in.
And hear that. Nobody here claims to be an authority. You should not assume that anyone here knows truth. And and nobody wants you to agree with them or accept anything. Really, don't accept anything as true. Don't believe it. Believing is a terrible mistake. Just hear it, let it in, and let your own experience tell you at some point whether or not it's true. It turns out we all, right here at the center of us, know what's true and what isn't. We see it for what's true and what isn't. If you're at all attuned to yourself, you'll recognize the bullshit in a hot second. But just let it in. Just hear what's being said, and don't critique it, and don't check to see if it agrees with what you've been taught or what you believe or anything else. Just let it in and hear what's being said, and that way you'll be much more receptive. If you have your critic in here, you won't hear what's being said. So that's sort of how to do this. Be passive in listening.
How do you know that you're understanding what each sentence is saying? Because when you think about the Bible, and there are many different interpretations of the Bible, and one person can read it and get something out of it, and somebody else can have a different interpretation. So when they're reading this, there's kind of the same idea where, are you really understanding everything that it's saying?
And I hear you, and the answer is make sure you know all the words in the sentence and make sure you understand this order in which they're strung together, and figure out why that sentence is there. And you certainly won't understand it. Many of the sentences will have lots of different levels of meaning as your consciousness grows. But here the sentence is a meaningful unit of information. Perhaps here it is the simplest level you can. But yeah, any book has more and more depth as any book that is having truth in it has more and more depth as you expand yourself.
Is that not more support as to why you don't hold it as truth? Because maybe your own perception what you see as truth now might change. It's not the same word, so therefore
it's not truth.
It's almost like you don't trust yourself.
It's not truth. It's a point. That's truth. See, words are very funny. I listened to Robert for the first 2 or 3 years that I was with him, and he was used the same sentences a lot, as he talked to different people and such like. And I kept sitting there wishing he'd just say what the hell he meant, instead of, saying these weird statements that he was making that had no meaning to me. And I knew what the sentences, I knew all the words. It was like somebody once said to me once, I understand all the words in your sentence. It's just the order in which you're stringing together that has me confused, And that was my experience with Robert, I kept saying, I wish you'd say what he was saying. And then one day, sitting there in the consciousness, I had a realization. I got what he was saying. And what he was saying, he was saying exactly what he meant, as best he could possibly say it. And having heard it and understood what he meant, having seen the moon, I understood what this meant. Okay? Having seen the moon, you understand the hand, but not having seen the moon, you have concepts about this. But having understood what he was saying, the words were right. And since then, I've had several more times that my understanding has dropped a level and dropped a level and dropped a level, and the words don't change, the sentence doesn't change, but the understanding deepens. And that goes on forever. That's what happened to Joel. Joel wrote the book in 45, and he didn't die until 64, and he had lots and lots and lots of revelations and lots of deepening in consciousness and initiations and on and on. Every year he went away for a couple of 3 months and dropped into the level. And at the end, everything that he said was in that first book. And the first book was, every word in the first book he still endorsed. It was still true. What had changed was his understanding of it and his level of teaching. And that happens around here a lot. That happened in the script work, and it happened in the kid work. Just this Saturday. We got a whole new understanding of the kid work. And yet, when we went on reading, the words were right. But we didn't see it quite that way before, so. So we keep going deeper and deeper. So just try to hear what's being said, let it in. And, all right, let's start the first chapter, which is called Emptying Out. Who's next?
I am. Emptying Out. There's another Zen story about a scholar and an intellectual in a university town in Japan, renowned for his erudition in numerous philosophies and religions, with an alphabet of letters after his name, who went to a Zen master to acquire instruction.
Just go ahead and read the story. Read to the bottom of the page.
The Zen master invited him in. They sat, and while the intellectual described all the initials after his name, the Zen master made tea. Then, while the intellectual listed all the philosophies that he'd mastered, the Zen master poured the tea. And while the intellectual described the depths of his understanding in various religions, the Zen master drank his tea. When the intellectual began to explore the certificates, awards, and acknowledgments he'd received, the Zen master lifted the teapot, refilled his own cup, and poured more tea into the intellectual's still full cup. The tea, of course, went all over everything, including the intellectual. The intellectual screamed, "What are you doing?" The Zen master replied, observing that before fresh tea can be poured into a cup, it must first be emptied. And he sent the intellectual on his way. And that's where we start. Before we can add spiritual understanding to our teacup, we have to empty out all the conditioned nonsense that's currently filling it. We are certainly not going to empty our teacups completely by reading this book. That's probably several years' work. But perhaps we will be able to discover how full our cups currently are and identify some of what's filling them. Mystical truth is...
Let's see if there's any questions about that. You get the point of that. We're filled with concepts, and we're filled with beliefs, and we're filled with all sorts of things we know that we've been told forever by parents and school teachers and priests and rabbis and preachers and AA sponsors and all sorts of people, and it's all been presented to us as truth, and it's all nonsense, and it all needs to be emptied out if we're going to hear spiritual truth. And that's what a lot of this work is about, is identifying what's nonsense and seeing that it's nonsense and coming about. Actually, we don't have to fill the cup with spiritual truth. All we have to do is empty it.
In experiencing that, what it seems like is when the aha comes, when I really get it, then things fall away rather than emptying them out before. Like, I have this big awareness that just everything just kind of crumbles away.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been real successful at emptying out before. I guess it's a long process between ahas.
But you don't recognize that the 5 years you spend between the ahas is finding out what doesn't work and throwing it out of your teacup.
That's a question.
You spend all your time, you spent all those 5 years emptying your teacup. And you haven't done it by specifically naming the concept and throwing it out, but human beings have two ways of learning. And one is by trying everything and discovering what doesn't work, and the other is by reading truth. Just like I like to say in AA, the steps work no matter why you work them. But you can learn truth by learning truth. You can also learn truth by not learning truth and discovering what doesn't work. It's usually a slow and painful process.
How can you receive an aha when you're full?
I can't explain it.
So the teacup is full.
It's not an intellectual process for me.
So,
Let's not crosstalk.
well, the question is, how can you
You can
receive?
address questions to me.
Fine. How can you receive an aha when you're full?
You
Or the parable?
You can't. That's the point.
But isn't the release of information an aha? I mean, isn't letting something go, it's the same work, isn't it? You describe 2 different weeks, one work is emptying, one work is filling, or is it not the same?
The ahas and the clicks are the result of seeing clearly. And you see clearly when the stuff which was obscuring your vision is gone. The aha is the recognition that that which has been obscuring your vision is no longer there. So the aha is really the recognition that your cup has been emptied or cleared out. Oh, I see. Who's saying that? Yeah, I see. Oh, yeah, your vision is no longer obscured. Yes.
Well, this is a bit premature because we might get to it. How do you, on a daily basis, work on the awareness of empty in your cup? How do you be aware of that?
Yeah, let us get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a class in itself. That's a life
point.
That's a life in itself.
I want it tonight.
Well, stop thinking. I'll wait. No, here's it. And we all do. And I'll give you the short version. Stop thinking.
You have it right now.
I don't have any advice on how to do that. But if you stop thinking, you'll have no concepts. Okay, what's next?
Mystical truth is invariably contrary to human reason, so there are lots of beliefs that have to go before we can gain this new understanding. Some of the beliefs that we need to empty out have to do with intellect, concepts of God, concepts of prayer, organized religion, matter, and human conditioning.
Nobody's going to ask the question about why it is that mystical truth is invariably contrary to human reason. Why is
Very good.
You said, how out of me?
Great question, though.
Because human reason involves the use of the intellect, and the intellect is a small finite computer, and truth is infinite and inexpressible. So the problem is that the human reason and the intellect is the wrong tool to use to understand truth.
So why are we sitting here?
To watch the hand pointing. Maybe you'll get smart enough to glance up once and see the moon. Okay, let's start with the intellect, which happens to be the first thing here. Who's next?
Intellect. The first thing that has to go is our habit of using our intellect. Spiritual understanding cannot be gained through the use of the intellect. Human consciousness, which includes the intellect, rejects spiritual truth. Truth cannot be understood. It has to be experienced. It's a presence, a being, not something rational.
Okay.
It isn't enough for our purposes to learn something and be able to pair it with. An A on a spiritual consciousness test gets the booby prize. Spiritual truth has to be realized. We need to click the aha of understanding. Often we will know this letter of truth for years. Then, perhaps for no obvious reason, we'll get an insight and a much deeper understanding will unfold. We will realize what the words meant at a whole new level. Of course, if we're asked to explain our new understanding, we'll discover that we can only use the same old words we had before.
That's what happened, and I'm sure you've had that experience. You know, I mean, we get the same experience just reading the big book of AA. You know, every time you read the book, there's new sentences in there, right? And you know, the authors keep getting wiser. Every time you go through the book, you know, there's more wisdom in there and such like. And that's just that our consciousness has grown, and so there's a deeper meaning there. But the sentences have always been right, and they're still right. That's characteristic of the book of truth. There's all pointers, and you can understand the pointing more deeply.
It's just, truth cannot be understood, it has to be experienced. Mm-hmm. But then reading is that the experience?
No. Reading is learning the letter of truth. We need to understand that we need to get clear here. I keep talking about the letter of truth. Learning the sentences, which in fact just point to truth, is an important thing to do. But they have no power in themselves. What they do, and we'll probably talk about this later, they help us clear the molasses out of our head so that we can open a pipe and get some insights. But the fact is that the aha, which are intuitive clicks, intuition is a spiritual thing. It's outside of the intellect. The ahas that result from an intuitive click outside of the intellect will not happen, it seems like, typically, if we don't know the letter of truth first. It seems like the process of learning the letter of truth thins the molasses in our head enough that the intuition pipe can get out so that we have some availability for ahas. And it doesn't happen generically, it happens truth by truth. So we get clicks on each truth. And you can have a click on a particular truth and not have any insight on another one at all. But that seems to be the process. So we learn the letter of truth. And if you get into the Joel tape, you'll have great fun listening to Joel talking about the metaphysicians who are reciting the truth as if it had power. And of course it doesn't. The words don't have power, the letter of truth has no power, but it enables us to get the ahas, and when we have the realization of the truth, that has power. That transforms your life.
Mm-hmm. So what's the point of reading these words, this book?
Or sitting here.
Learning the letter of truth is the first step towards having a spiritual experience. Conditioning clogs our brains like molasses.
I think I've read this before, wouldn't you?
Learning the letter of truth begins to thin the molasses, so spiritual faculties like insight and intuition can begin to see through it.
When you read this book, don't read it with your intellect. On the first reading, don't even question it. Osho told us, if you ask a question and I answer it, your mind, intellect, immediately generates 10 more questions. The process never ends. I am not here to answer your questions. I am here to bring you to the place where you stop asking questions. The idea is to be passive in this process. Don't listen for something in particular. Simply hear what's being said. Be as open and embracing as possible. You don't need to embrace. You don't need to believe or accept anything that's being said. Just try to hear it. If it's different from what you currently believe, that doesn't mean it or you right or wrong. Believing has nothing to do with it. Just hear what's being said, let it in, and perhaps later go back, read it again, and see if anything is true for you.
Questions?
Well, I was thinking like the principle that Bill talks a lot about, like secrecy, and like, I don't know, when I read that in the beginning, it says like, the intellect rejects the spiritual truth, and is that kind of like one of the reasons why I love this class, and I feel like there's so much truth, and I get so excited, and of course I want to go, we were talking about this before, I want to tell everybody I know, but then instantly I find myself having it, well, what is it? What do you talk about? And then once words get involved, then it turns into a mess, and, someone like picks up a dull book I have, and they're like, I don't know, I'm just wondering, like, the principle of secrecy, and, like, when I have a clip, like, not sharing it right away, I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's a good point. Hearing these letters of truth and going out and sharing them is really beautiful, because people don't want to hear it I mean, people that are ready to hear it hear it, and the rest of the people don't want to hear it. If you do have a click or an aha and hear us and realize a spiritual truth, then especially you don't want to go out there and share it, because it's a very new truth, and it's something you're just working with and just trying to get a hold of, and if you take it out there, the people who haven't yet had it, which means 99 people out of 100, are going to need to belittle it in order to keep you at their level. And so they will tear it down, and they will perhaps talk you out of it. And you may lose that truth, and you may never get it again in this lifetime, okay? So what you want to do is you want to take that truth inside and keep it quiet. The other thing is, you can't explain it to them, because if you explain it to them, you're using words, you're not explaining what you realize, right? So you can't explain it to them. So what you do is you take it inside and you keep it quiet. When it's yours, when you really realize it, when it's really part of your consciousness, your life will demonstrate it. Your light will be visible to everybody, and they will come to you then. They will come to you and ask you, what is it that you know? What is it that you have that I don't have? And when they come to you and ask you for it, then it's time to deliver it, because now it's yours, and people are seeing it just in the way you are. So the principle of secrecy is very important for your own spiritual growth. If you're out there fighting it, you're losing it until you have it. And when you have it, it will be drawn out of you. When I went to India and spent half a year with Osho, I came back and I was quiet for, during that time I sponsored one guy who came and got me and drew it out of me. And other than that, I was quiet and didn't sponsor people and didn't tell anybody about what had happened there or talk about it for 9 years. And one guy, I was at the 11th-step meeting, maybe 5 years after I'd been to India, and I was just sitting in the 11th-step meeting, and he was sitting over on the other side, and he was a newcomer, and he shared some nonsense. And I just opened my eyes and looked at it, and then closed my eyes again and went back to sitting with my eyes closed, and he walked up to me after the meeting and asked me to be a sponsor. So he had seen there'd been a connection at the consciousness level. When I opened my eyes and looked at it, he knew I knew exactly what he was saying and where he was coming from and the whole story. And so then he came and asked me to be the sponsor. And long story unfolded there. So when you've got it, they'll know it, they'll come to you. Okay? And until you've got it, and they know it, until you're demonstrating it in your life, until your consciousness is manifesting in your life, you haven't got it. Yeah.
I've heard it's kind of like attraction rather than promotion. Mm-hmm. I think Jerry asked the first question that was kind of how did Robert, and I forgot what it said about Robert, but it seemed like it was more, his teaching was just be attracted. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And the teaching was the attraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, sure. I mean, the reason I went to India was somebody told me how to read this book by Osho, and by Bhagwan Rashneesh. At the time he wasn't Osho yet, and they gave me the book, and I read the first 10 pages, and I knew, after reading 10 pages of the first book that I ever seen, I knew that he was a master, and I knew he was my guru. I mean, I just knew it. There was that kind of consciousness already in him, and he's in India, and I'm here, so his consciousness was that strong. I knew him and recognized him, and wanted having to go to India to sit with him. So when you have it, they'll come. He had no trouble at all pulling me 12,000 miles to come sit at his feet. I had no choice. So when you got it, they'll come.
It makes you laugh. Sometimes I feel like it's a long drive to come to Hermosa.
Don't get me started.
All in perspective.
Yeah, don't get me started. About driving through downtown LA.
Yeah.
What did you say? Yeah, what did you have, Brooks?
At the point at which you found that you had mentioned something that you've learned or experienced, isn't that exactly what that person was supposed to hear? I mean, isn't it kind of the... At the point at which you said it, is that what you were supposed to say and they were supposed to hear?
If you're going to want to play the game where everything is absolutely predetermined and nobody has any choice anywhere and it's all working perfectly, then there's no reason for you to be attending here even. You know, I mean, that's the answer to everything. But it doesn't get anybody anywhere. If that's what he's supposed to hear and you said it and you're supposed to say it and he's supposed to hear it and then he's supposed to belittle your stuff, and you're supposed to lose it, and you're supposed to come back in your next lifetime and have to learn it again, that may be the story, but that's not the context in which we're working. We're working in the context that we need to be acting as if we have choice about these sort of things and need to make decisions and get to work on taking care of our own selves. So that level of question just is non-productive even to ourselves. The answer to that question is always the same, and it doesn't do anybody any good. What did you have, Dana?
Does the spiritual secrecy apply to people that you're working with that have a higher consciousness than you?
You can tell your new truth to your spiritual teacher if you're led to, but you don't need to. But don't just make the cynical decision that he's higher than I am, so I should tell him that. If you have a teacher, you can share it with the teacher, for sure. Often your teacher will be able to expand it for you by telling similar things, or, it works the same way as a sponsorship, your sponsor will tell you similar examples and etch it in deeper and deeper, okay? But, so yeah, certainly you can tell your teacher, but I would say that you probably don't want to tell anybody except the person who is functioning as your teacher in that area. And then only if you're led to it. If you have any hesitation about sharing it, don't. You don't need to, it's yours. It will grow all by itself. You don't need to enhance it or do anything else.
I don't understand why, if you lose truth, you say, you're talking about the truth and they talk you out of it and they lose it. Mm-hmm. Not get it back in this lifetime. And you may have to come back and why would you lose it in the lifetime? You might.
I'm just saying, though, you have your life. Yeah, you may lose it for this lifetime. You might not get it again. The fact is that lesson was presented to you and you had a chance to get it, and then you lost it, and the school has moved on, and you may get other lessons, but often it happens that you don't get a chance at that lesson again. I haven't had that experience, but Joel and Barbara and Lorraine, all three, talk about that. Joel Goldsmith and two of the students, Lorraine Sinclair and Barbara Moll, talk about that fact. He claims that this principle of secrecy is the most important spiritual principle. That's how strong he is about it. Yeah.
I found that I had less and less people to speak to about this. And, it's like I'm getting lonely. No, but it's true. So in the beginning, when I had this feeling of truth inside of me, I would try to tell it to other people, but there was just no way. It's like, the best things cannot be said. It's like, and then I stopped telling people, and then I found that I wanted to talk to somebody about it, and then that's when I showed up here. So it's perfect. And then now I speak to Steve and Joanne, and I call them, when I really have to.
Now that's the truth. The people that you can talk about, first of all, the people that you can talk to about this sort of stuff is a small group. And the next thing that happens is you lose interest in talking about anything else. And you start feeling like you don't have any friends, but there's 4 of us here. Get around. Get some names and phone numbers. One of the most important things we're doing here, the purpose of this work, the purpose of everything we're doing in this Leelaa community is to get free. That's what it's all about. But one of the most important things we're doing here is building a community, because it's easier to get free in a community. The Buddha principles are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And Buddha is the master, the enlightened one, the consciousness. And Dharma is the truth, teaching. And Sangha is the community of seekers. So Buddhism for 2,500 years has recognized that the community is as important as the rest of it, as the teacher and the teaching. And you get, AA is going to be, we'll talk about that a lot if it keeps coming up. AA has got to be the best example of a lot of this stuff. I mean, the AA community is probably the only true example of community in the United States, where you define community in the peck sense of it, where community means people who selflessly support each other and nurture each other and will go out of their way like we will for a 12-step call or keep somebody from drinking or stuff like that. The AA is a real community, and people get sober in the AA community that don't get sober outside of it. The reason churches don't get people sober is because they may get them holy, but that's not the consciousness that's going on there. So community is an important aspect of it, and what we have is, that's why we do workshops and stuff like that. We're trying to develop a sense of community. So look around you and see who's here. There's lots of people we can talk about. This is a fairly high-level class by the time we get done, and there's a lot of people sitting here, so plenty of people to talk to. It's 6:27, 8:27, and I don't think we want to jump in for a 1 minute's worth of concepts of God, so that's a good place to start there. Next week we'll jump into God, prayer, and organized religion, and I don't think we want to just open that can of worms tonight. That's an hour's worth of work. Let me talk about flashcards briefly. A flashcard is just a single sentence that we all will take with us, and it's not a truth, it's not some great revelation, it's an intellectual exercise. The problem with our full teacup, the problem with us is that we're conditioned to believe all these things. And the flashcards are sort of a technique for deconditioning, for deprogramming. You have to deprogram people like they do with people that have been off to cults. Humanity is a cult that teaches amazing lies, and we all need to be deprogrammed. And so flashcards are a deprogramming technique. And what we do is carry the flashcard with us, and we bring it out whenever a situation confronts us. We bring out the flashcard, and just remember the flashcard. We don't expect it to have any power. We just remember the flashcard and see if it changes how the situation looks. Okay, so we're going to do a flashcard. I have a flashcard for each chapter, and we may need more flashcards, or we may use the same one for 2 or 3 weeks. So the flashcard for the emptying out chapter is, I do not know anything. So whenever you're confronted with that, and it's a really wonderful one for lots of situations, whenever you're confronted with anything that you think is going wrong, the answer is, I don't know anything. When you're confronted with, what am I supposed to do about this? The answer is, I do not know anything. It's a fun flashcard. Do you get it? Does everybody understand what we're doing with flashcards?
No.
No. Whenever,
give me a practical situation. I actually write on a flashcard, put it in my pocket.
You can do that if you want to, or at least imagine you have that. Whenever you feel any emotion come up, any emotion of any kind at all, and this is a good rule. Whenever you feel any emotion come up, drag out your flashcard and read it, and see if it's true.
So it's your universal solution.
Yeah.
When you're about to tell someone what they need to do, read your flashcard first.
Exactly.
Universal solution.
Yeah. When you think you know how things are supposed to be, read your flashcard.
You're sitting up in the room with whiskey for that, right?
Well, not after that, but I don't even know anything.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Get what we're doing? Now This class will be up on the website Wednesday morning, and the flashcard is also on the website. You can always go to the website. If you go to the website under audio, you'll find Pointing at the Moon and click there, and it will bring you to a page that will have the audio files on it, and it will have the flashcard on it. So if you forget the flashcard, you can go online and find out what it is.
Where was it?
On the Pointing to the Moon page under audio.
Did you put a basket out for the class team?
It's there on the desk behind Doug. And sure.
Did I hear you say to them I do not need to know anything?
Mm-hmm.
So that is not another flashcard.
No. It will be. This week's flashcard is I do not know anything. It's this week's flashcard.
I don't need to.
What else? Anything else?
Can we read ahead, or do you suggest we don't?
I don't care. I don't know anything about that. No, I don't care. I don't have any sense of how you ought to do it. Go with them. I don't claim to know what any of you should do about anything. The answer is always to go within and see what you do. Just to see what you want to do. Reading the book straight through will probably give you absolutely nothing, except a sense of the scope of the book. Anything that's worth reading is worth reading. All right, let's get quiet for one more minute just to put a seal on it. The meditation, by the way, is the most important thing we do, the meditation at the beginning of the class. So really make an effort to be on time. The door opens at 7, and the meditation starts promptly at 7:15. And it's in the meditation that we get lifted high enough that we may get our intellects out of gear and be able to hear some of what's being said here. So it's the group meditation that lifts the class high enough that we can make some progress in doing this work. So please make the effort to be here. Any questions come up during the week, bring them next Monday. We can start out with questions, or we can start out with practical experiences using the flashcard, whatever, before we dive into the reading again. Thanks for coming. I love you all. See you next week. Bye, Dalton.